Hello everyone, welcome to Audible Wisdom. Protect your eyes with your ears. I hope you enjoy listening to books.
The book we're talking about today is Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It's the #1 book on the New York Times bestseller list. Why is it so popular? Because it hits the nail on the head of our time. Haidt tells a fictional story that sounds absurd but is terrifying. He asks readers to imagine this scenario. Let's say you have a bright, active 10-year-old, and then one day, a representative from a high-tech space exploration company pays you a surprise visit. They tell you that your child has been honored to be selected for the company's Mars immigration program. Soon, your child will join others his or her age in a spaceship and arrive at a human colony either on or beneath the surface of Mars. However, with your scientific knowledge and the information you have gathered, you begin to worry. Will your children be able to thrive in the intense radiation, thin atmosphere, and unique gravity of Mars? Will they be able to master the complex technologies needed to survive and maintain the settlements? And will they be able to live in harmony and avoid harming each other in the absence of adults in a remote, enclosed environment? Just as you are about to open your mouth to debate and seek answers from the representatives of this technology company, you're handed a cold form. They claim that your child has already signed the agreement. According to company policy, once signed, parental objections are null and void. He's about to take your child to a mysterious, closed training facility to prepare for an upcoming launch. Doesn't that sound creepy? However, Mr. Haidt then points out that this story is not fiction, but is happening all around us, without a word being said. All you have to do is replace the space exploration companies and Mars settlements in this story with consumer electronics manufacturers and internet-enabled gadgets, and you've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. In the book's preface, Mr. Haidt gets right to the point. Today, the internet and consumer electronics, such as cell phones, tablets, and game consoles, have become an enormous force in reshaping the mental development of children and adolescents. More critically, because of a lag in regulation and parental awareness, we're almost tacitly allowing this force to hijack our next generation. We're giving up the right to develop our children's cognitive and emotional capacities with ease. The author of this book, Mr. Haidt, is one of America's leading positive psychologists and was named one of the world's leading thinkers by Prospect magazine in 2013. He is also the author of the critically acclaimed psychological classics The Happiness Hypothesis and The Righteous Mind. In this new work, Anxious Generation, published in 2024, Mr. Haidt turns his attention to one of the greatest problems facing the global community today. What happens when children's lives are taken over by the internet and electronic devices? Mr. Haidt warns us of an unprecedented crisis in adolescent development. The negative effects are already being felt. These include a decline in social and academic skills, cognitive stagnation, serious physical health problems, and mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. These problems are particularly pronounced in youth born after the year 2000. That's why Mr. Haidt calls these kids who can't help themselves the anxiety generation, and why he's named his new book after them. So what's next? I'm going to take you on a deep dive into the in-depth research and studies conducted by the book's author, Mr. Haidt. The global youth development crisis caused by the internet and electronic devices, including its origins, its mechanisms, and its specific negative effects. And finally, near the end of this video, let's take a closer look at some possible solutions that Haidt suggests. Professor Haidt recalls, "Whenever I had to talk to the parents of children for my psychosocial research, the topic would inevitably turn to their children's online lives, their addiction to smartphones, social media, and video games. The parents' complaints and problems are basically the same. In their accounts, they describe a pattern of endless conflict between themselves and their children. Parents struggle to minimize the amount of time their children spend with electronics. But with all the devices in the house and all the ways kids can avoid supervision, there's no end to it. Disagreements and fights over gadget use can alienate and even destroy family relationships." One father confessed to Professor Haidt that his 11-year-old son, James, was mildly autistic. During the Newcastle epidemic, when the school could only teach online, he bought James a computer. So he bought James a Sony PlayStation. He hoped it would help his son spend his free time. At first, video games and the internet seemed to help James' symptoms. He fell in love with the popular shooter, Fortnite, and made a lot of friends playing it. But as James' obsession grew, his parents became concerned and tried to limit the amount of time he spent playing. The result was a withdrawal reaction that made James seem like a different person. In addition to the depression and anxiety of autism, he showed unprecedented levels of anger and aggression, and there was nothing his parents could do about it. Professor Haidt was involved in a psychosocial study. He found that in the decade from 2010 to 2020, American teenagers between the ages of 12 and 17, the rate of major depression among males jumped 161%. And for female teens, the rate jumped to 145%. And it's only going to get worse after 2020. In addition, suicides and self-harm among American teens have skyrocketed since 2010. Teens are at the most energetic and hopeful stage of their lives. What is causing this dramatic decline in their mental and emotional well-being? Professor Haidt says he's beginning to wonder if smart electronics and the internet are really behind it all. First, in terms of the timeline, the proliferation of smart devices and the mobile internet and the deterioration of the mental and emotional state of America's teenagers have occurred at almost the same time. According to the Pew Research Center, a leading independent research organization in the United States, in 2011, 77% of U.S. teens owned a cell phone, with smartphones accounting for about 23% of that total. But less than 5 years later, in 2016, 79% of American teens had switched to smartphones. Even kids in the 8 to 12 age group have a staggering 28% smartphone penetration rate. The iPhone 4 was introduced in 2010. It was the first Apple smartphone to feature a front-facing camera. Professor Haidt warns that special attention should be paid to this technological feature, which has revolutionized online social interaction. In particular, the front-facing camera makes it easier for users to take selfies. As a result, there was an immediate chemistry between Apple's smartphones and image-based social networking platforms like Instagram. In just 1 year, Instagram went from 10 million to 90 million registered users, mostly young people. They found that showing their lives through images was a way to attract attention and expand their social networks. Compared to the old digital cell phones that only allowed voice calls and text messaging, modern smartphones have created a powerful and complex system of virtual existence. Whether you're playing games, active on social media platforms, watching videos, shopping, etc., it's as if you're in the middle of a continuous stream of information. You can effortlessly navigate between all kinds of information at will. Even the seemingly monotonous experience of flying can be enjoyable and immersive. Over time, smartphone users can become very dependent on this kind of information. Simply put, they don't want to get lost in the flood of information, even for a moment. For teens who value the opinions of their peers, missing a single piece of news, gossip, or even a buzzword is tantamount to being abandoned by their entire social circle. And studies show that since 2015, American teens have spent an average of about 7 hours a day staring at the screens of various electronic devices. About 25% of teens say they'd stay online if they could. And by 2022, that percentage has nearly doubled to a staggering 46%. Professor Haidt points out that when portable electronic devices are combined with the internet, it's like opening a portal to a new world for children. Through this door, children enter a universe that is both exciting and full of unknowns and risks, or virtual worlds. Their friends are no longer real people, but virtual characters in social media or online games. The way they learn about the world is by scrolling through an endless stream of short videos on media platforms. Each video is driven by a carefully designed algorithm. Even the amount of time they spend typing and touching screens far exceeds the amount of time they spend interacting with their real-life family, friends, and even pets. And yet, other socioeconomists and psychologists believe that this wave of teenage angst may be caused by the economic downturn and the exacerbation of other global problems, such as war and conflict and extreme climate change. But Professor Haidt takes a different view. First, the U.S. unemployment rate has been falling since 2010. Second, the collective anxiety caused by other external social problems can in turn lead to greater internal cohesion among members of society. This is because doing something about public problems gives people a strong sense of belonging and fulfillment. But all of this stands in stark contrast to the state of mental health among today's youth. There's also strong evidence that global teen mental anxiety is strongly linked to internet use. This dramatic deterioration in adolescent mental health is a global trend. In addition to North America, similar mental health conditions among adolescents have been observed in Northern and Western Europe, Australia, and East Asia. So do these regions and countries share some common characteristics? The answer is yes. They have relatively high levels of economic development and high rates of internet and smartphone penetration. How do electronic devices on the internet negatively impact the physical and mental health of children and teens? Let's take a step back. First of all, what are the rules of physical and mental development for children? For example, we humans, both physically and psychologically, grow at a rapid pace, then slowly and steadily, and then rapidly in a wonderful rhythm. It helps you understand why we're not like other creatures. We have a long childhood with a surprisingly slow rate of growth. Now you're probably wondering, what is it about childhood that makes it so long and so slow? Well, Professor Haidt tells us, it's the trials and tribulations we've endured over the course of our long evolutionary history. After all, as children we had to build a social community based on group cooperation and a clear division of labor, so that we could help each other and raise our offspring together. And we also had the good things like language and writing to pass on knowledge and experience. That's why only we humans are entitled to such a long childhood. We have enough time to learn and adapt to the outside world. Haidt makes this very clear in her book. Playing with our friends is the most important thing in our childhood, in what looks like childish play in the eyes of adults. Children's cognitive abilities and ways of thinking are slowly being formed. In neuroscience, as a technical term, human cognitive and thinking activities are actually the process of neurons in the brain releasing and exchanging electrical signals through interconnections. When two or more neurons end up holding hands, it means we've learned something new, we've mastered a new skill. So when children play, the neurons in the brain come alive, reach out and hold hands with their new friends, and start sending electrical signals. Neuroscience research has shown that sending and receiving electrical signals causes neurons to grow new tentacles. And the more complex the information received and the environment, the more neurons are involved and the more active they become. So playing with people in a natural environment is a great way to learn and improve cognitive skills. Close encounters with nature and friends provide a variety of experiences. While playing, children not only develop their physical coordination, role-playing and division of labor also improve essential skills such as language, teamwork, empathy, and caring for others. But the advent of electronic devices and the internet has changed all that. In his book, Professor Haidt provides a set of long-term data from 1991 to 2017 of kids and teens in the U.S. The percentage of American kids and teens who consistently engage in face-to-face interactions with their peers on a daily basis has dropped dramatically, from over 60% to about 20%. In Professor Haidt's words, the childhood of today's children has been replaced by technology. What was once dominated by real-life play is gradually becoming a new age of online virtual experiences. Talking about this topic, there seems to be a misunderstanding. They think there are so many activities and experiences on the internet. Can children make more friends through the internet without the constraints of time and space? But what about this view? Professor Haidt will give you an in-depth analysis and rebuttal based on his many years of experience in psychology. First, let's look at real-life experiences and games. They give children more freedom. They stimulate children's imagination and desire to explore. Children can climb up a tall pile of wood and imagine that it's a ship they're about to set sail on. They can also use simple materials like clay and sand and acorn bark to create life-size people and animals. But in the game, you're stuck with the rules, and you can't get out of that little display. And what's worse, in a game, you tend to get achievements easier and faster. And that stimulates the reward circuits in our brains a lot. And that can lead to addictive behavior by stimulating the reward circuits in our brain, which can lead to a high level of dopamine production in the brain. Some neuroscientists have done experiments. They found that when people play video games, there are far fewer areas of the brain that are activated than when they engage in other recreational activities in a real-world setting. Also, neuroscientists have scanned the brains of people who have been addicted to video games for a long time and have found that areas that are responsible for complex tasks, such as the prefrontal insula, have atrophied to varying degrees. To be more specific, the gray matter areas where the neurons are concentrated are becoming thinner and thinner, and in some cases have disappeared altogether. These are the parts of the brain that are primarily responsible for allowing us to understand the emotions of others, to communicate information verbally, to control muscle movement, to plan and manage our daily lives, and so on. Think about it. It's so critical to human survival skills. What would be the consequences if these skills continued to decline or were lost? In addition, real-life interactions and games foster a spirit of cooperation. Collaboration isn't just about physical cooperation. It's about getting along with others. It's about the organizational and communication skills needed to work together on a team project. Kids can get together, jump rope, and dance to the beat of the music. These are ancient human traditions. It's about fostering a sense of belonging to a community. Consider a little test that psychologists once conducted. They took a group of students and divided them into two groups. They asked them to listen to a song through headphones and then to shake their bodies as they pleased. One group of students heard the exact same tune. The other group listened to different songs. The results showed that the first group of students were more likely to dance in a group. The psychologists then asked the two groups of volunteers to participate in a task that required everyone to work together. The results showed that the first group of students completed the task faster and with higher quality. This shows that the cooperation and coordination skills needed by humans in the process of social survival and development actually need to be consciously cultivated and trained. In retrospect, while the internet enables virtualized communication, it doesn't guarantee it. Haidt emphasizes that real-life interaction and communication is a synchronized process. When you send a message with words, facial expressions, or physical gestures, the other person receives it immediately and usually responds quickly. So how important is this communication in real life? For example, when you're a baby, you interact with your parents. Eye contact, body contact, facial expressions. These seemingly simple behaviors actually lay the foundation for a child's social skills and psycho-emotional patterns. When parents respond positively, children feel safer and their emotional patterns become more positive. In the same way, in the real world, children learn to read people's expressions. They learn to read people's facial expressions and body language. They learn to recognize the needs of others and the boundaries between their emotions and their interests. However, internet communication is an asynchronous process with a limited amount of information. That means there's no guarantee of a timely response, and you can't see each other's facial expressions or body language through a cold screen. The words they send you don't reveal their emotions, so it's a very limited amount of information. And what's worse, kids are getting access to electronic devices and the internet at an earlier age. This asynchronous communication with insufficient information and feedback is causing irreparable damage to children. Why is that? Well, according to social psychology research by Haidt, the period between the ages of 9 and 15 is a crucial time for everyone. That's because this is the age when the frontal cortex, which is responsible for self-awareness, attention allocation, and emotional control, begins to develop at a rapid pace. Many of the behavioral and cognitive patterns that are important to us throughout our lives, such as communication patterns, emotional responses, and self-worth judgments, are formed and fixed during this period. Therefore, if children devote too much of their time and energy during this period to the virtual communication facilitated by electronic devices and the internet, then their communication and empathy development will suffer, and the consequences will be very serious. Haidt offered a simple example. Why do young people today like to add all kinds of emoticons and stems to their conversations? It's because they can't express their emotions effectively in this virtual communication environment. And last but not least, the negative impact of electronic devices and the internet is that children have lost the right values. One of the key functions of the human community is to impart knowledge, skills, and values by having children emulate the behavior of their role models. Aside from parents, children are often most likely to emulate the best-behaved adults in their social community. The famous evolutionary anthropologist Hennessy called this tradition prestige bias. In pre-industrial societies, children emulated the warriors of the tribe, the hunters, the skilled craftsmen of the village, that sort of thing. And as we moved into the industrial age, with the rise of mass entertainment media like television and movies and the popularization of shopping and consumer culture, gradually, young people began to look up to sports and entertainment stars or successful entrepreneurs. However, in the internet age, internet celebrities have become more prominent among children's idols. Unfortunately, many internet celebrities have gained a lot of attention not because of their outstanding contributions to the community or their specialized skills, but simply because of a random event that made them famous. In Haidt's words, in the age of the internet celebrity, one's reputation can be divorced from one's excellence. The emergence of the internet celebrity represents a herd mentality amplified by social media. In his book, Haidt singles out the Kardashians. He says they're not even entertainment stars because they're not good singers or actors. They've gotten a lot of web traffic just by showing their private lives. But then again, it takes a long time for these problems to show up. But that's what Hector said. In addition to these long-term group problems, overindulgence in the internet and electronics can cause serious harm to children in the short term. So in the next chapters of his book, Haidt tells us more about these things through his own research. First, let's look at the common problems experienced by all children and adolescents. These problems are not gender-specific. They include 1. Social deprivation. We talked about this before, because children spend a lot of time playing on the computer and surfing the internet. As a result, they gradually lose the normal social activities in real life. According to statistics, although electronics and the internet have a similar effect on people of all ages, it's teenagers who suffer the most. According to data provided by Haidt in his book, from 2003 to 2019, U.S. 15 to 24-year-olds have seen their daily time spent in face-to-face interactions plummet from about 160 minutes a day to about 40 minutes a day. That's a 75% drop. The disappearance of real social interaction has created a vicious cycle. Teens who become addicted to the internet at an early age are slow to develop social skills and empathy. And this lack of social skills and empathy contributes to their insecurity and frustration in the real world. That's why today's teens may have countless friends on various social media platforms and communication apps. But their sense of loneliness is even stronger than that of adults. 2. Sleep deprivation. Being addicted to electronic devices and the internet can greatly reduce the amount of time a user spends sleeping, which in turn affects the quality of their sleep, especially among teenagers. A 2012 sleep survey of 4,700 volunteers in 7 countries found that a staggering 24% of people under the age of 24 said that playing on their mobile phones before bed made them sleep longer than they should. Playing on their phones before bed made it harder for them to fall asleep, and they slept less. Chronic sleep deprivation not only makes kids feel tired and depressed the next day, it can also lead to long-term psychological and cognitive problems such as depression and ADHD. 3. Distraction. Simply put, people who use electronic devices usually go into a multitasking mode. Watching a TV show, scrolling through social media, chatting at the same time, that sort of thing. Teenagers have trouble concentrating because their brains aren't fully developed yet. Plus, they're constantly switching from window to window on their electronic devices. They're constantly switching from one excitement point to another. It's even more difficult to develop sustained concentration. And good attention control is the basic prerequisite for learning and mastering other complex skills. 4. Internet addiction. And for those who are addicted, attempts to break free can lead to a variety of serious withdrawal symptoms, including anxiety, irritability, and emptiness. By now, I'm sure many parents are already feeling the pinch. But the worst is yet to come. Haidt points out that behind these generalized problems, addiction to the internet and gadgets produces different and additional problems for boys and girls, respectively. You probably know that too much internet and gaming is bad for boys. Let me just summarize. 1. A significant decrease in mental capacity. 2. Lack of a sense of adventure and exploration. Because gaming and online life allows boys to succeed without actually trying. So they are less and less willing to work hard to improve themselves in the real world. 3. A lot of pornographic and violent content in games and on the internet can sometimes lead some boys to imitate it in real life. They may end up committing violent acts or breaking the law. 4. Physical health problems, such as getting fat, heart disease, hearing and vision problems, etc. For girls who are addicted to the internet, Hector made a shocking new observation. The internet is even more damaging to girls. Hector gave us an example from his own experience. There was a little girl named Alex Horsey. When she was 11 years old, she secretly signed up for an Instagram account behind her mom and dad's back. She lied about her age to get the site to approve it, saying she was 13, which was the minimum age for Instagram. Alex had a conversation with Height. She said, "The reason I love being online so much is because I just want to keep in touch with people my own age and not miss out on anything. If I miss something, I feel like I'm being left out. It makes me feel inferior, and I even get teased by my female classmates." At first, Alex was happy. She was able to keep up with what her classmates were doing, and her fan base was growing. It made her feel like a little internet celebrity. But it didn't take long for things to get worse. Because Instagram's big data algorithm analyzed Alex's daily browsing habits. And it kept pushing out similar content based on her preferences, like fitness and diet and weight loss. As a result, Alex fell into a deep state of anxiety. Soon she became depressed and anorexic and had to be hospitalized. And she drew a picture of herself. It showed a little girl cowering in the corner of her room with her cell phone on the floor and her laptop on her bed. And there were a lot of self-deprecating comments in the picture. Like, "I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm gonna die." So what's going on? Well, in a nutshell, Height believes that girls' natural mindset and cognitive patterns make them more likely to rely on social media. A 2014 survey found that nearly 1/3 of girls spend more than 20 hours a week on social media. In contrast, boys are only about half as likely as girls to be heavy social media users. The reason for this disparity is that girls are more emotionally empathetic than boys and place a higher value on interpersonal interactions and maintaining social relationships. In addition, during childhood and adolescence, a girl's sense of self-worth depends heavily on the opinions and evaluations of her peers on social networks. Height believes that this unique psychological structure makes girls particularly vulnerable in today's world of social networking. And guess what? In a British study of adolescent mental health, the more time girls spend on social media, the more likely they are to become depressed. Women who spent 5 or 6 hours a day online were 40% more likely to be depressed. Height also said that girls are so vulnerable in this so-called image network era. That's for a couple of reasons. First, girls are naturally more sensitive than boys and more susceptible to emotional changes. And during adolescence, they often feel confused about their self-worth. So it's easy for them to worry about their appearance and body image. Then there is the fame bias we mentioned earlier. As a result, many girls start to idolize girls on social media who are pretty and have good bodies. And when they look at themselves in the mirror, they feel more and more inferior. And secondly, when there's a disagreement or a conflict, girls are more likely to use their relationships as a way to beat each other up. Height explains it this way. If two boys are fighting, they may choose to use their fists to solve the problem. But girls are different. They may isolate the person they're having a problem with in their social circle by spreading rumors about her appearance, personal qualities, and so on to lower her status among her friends. In the end, all kinds of negative feelings will spread like a virus on social networks. Girls who are emotional and understanding are more likely to be affected. You see, as Height tells us, we've all learned about the evils of children's excessive use of electronic devices and the internet. So what can we do about this widespread and serious problem? Don't worry, in the last part of the book, Height offers his own solution. He emphasizes that the problem requires a concerted effort by everyone. The government, internet companies, schools, and parents all need to take action. First, let's talk about what governments and companies can do. According to Height, governments must pass laws to protect the best interests of children. The principle of protecting the best interests of the child must be the first and foremost rule that companies must follow when designing their products and services. For example, all content aimed at minors under the age of 18 should have the highest level of privacy protection. Kids can't change the privacy settings on their content without parental consent. Haidt then suggested raising the age of internet access to 16. This would at least ensure that children between the ages of 9 and 15, which is the critical period for shaping their cognitive and emotional patterns and forming their values, are as far away as possible from the influence of bad information, and prevent them from being harmed by exposure to social networks and online gaming addiction. Now let's talk about what Hector thinks schools should do to keep kids from becoming overly addicted to the internet and electronic devices. Most importantly, schools should promote a cell phone-free environment. At least during school hours, students should be required to put their cell phones in a centralized cell phone locker. It's been reported that in 2024, the Norwegian Institute of Public Health has published a study. It was found that if a smart cell phone management policy was implemented in middle schools, it could effectively reduce the risk of mental illness among students and reduce the number of bullying incidents. In addition, students' grade point averages and college acceptance rates increase significantly. In addition to controlling cell phones, there are many other things that schools can do, and it's not hard to do. For example, increase the number of sports, clubs, and interest groups in the school. Even offer volunteer psychology classes. Teach kids how to deal with the problems and worries of adolescence. The school can also work with parents and the local community to develop programs for the children's development. Children are free to form small teams under the guidance of their teachers. They can perform challenging tasks: cooking, washing clothes, repairing electrical appliances, and so on. Professor Haidt explains, it's important that they learn the skills they need to grow up and live independently. But more importantly, these small, seemingly insignificant successes give children the real sense of accomplishment. They need to break away from their overprotective dependence on their parents. And it helps them stop indulging in the false sense of satisfaction that comes from online socializing and gaming. After all, parents are their closest guardians and mentors, and the ones they emulate. That's why parents play a crucial role in this campaign to stop their children from overusing electronic devices and the internet. Professor Haidt says that parents must take responsibility for strictly controlling screens and electronic devices in the home to prevent their children from overexposure. Some parents are lazy themselves. They think that cell phones, game consoles, and tablets are their best helpers. They leave these screen devices to their children. Let them immerse themselves in the virtual world, and then they can take a few hours off themselves. This is actually a very wrong approach, but it will accelerate the formation of internet addiction in children, which is not worth the cost. So how do you control it properly? Professor Haidt has given a detailed and specific set of rules in this section. For space reasons, I'll stop here. Even if the children reach the age of 16, even if they have their own smartphones and social media accounts, parents can't take this lightly. It's important to maintain regular communication with your kids so that they feel free to talk to you about their problems and worries. Well, thanks for listening. See you next time.